Well, one of those weekends. We will, of course, be talking about all things Old Trafford related with Damien Delaney very, very soon. Happy to say Conán has survived into podcast number 2. Hey, well done you. Not cut just yet.
It's going well. Going well.
Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent is here in studio. Hello, old friend.
Joe, it's good to see you.
You were the reason I said yes.
I have to say, Joe, it was lovely last week just to catch up with you, and you said, you sort of suggested, there's a canteen on the 4th floor, we could go and chat, and I was like, I know, Joe, I've been working here for 18 years, but thanks for the tip nonetheless. It's always nice to be shown around your office by the newcomer.
Well, listen, it's good to be. I'm
still making your presence felt around the place.
I'm still that guy that's just, just everything's great and happy. No toner in the printer, no problem. It's all good. Whereas
very relaxed. Yeah.
Dan is that guy where, I didn't want to say.
No, say it. I just don't have staff running around after me, Joe.
Well, this is true.
This is if I just come in with a couple of people just to do a lot of that stuff for me,
I'd recommend
do my printing for me,
I'd recommend it.
Yeah.
So there's obviously lots to get into. Can I just, for one brief second, given that you are obviously, Dan, an authority in Irish football, just get my head straight on what happened last week with the FAI? Because even by their standards, it does seem like a bit of a doozy. Can I run you through it as I understand it? And actually, it's a substantive point, so I think it's almost right that we start off this first football conversation on that kind of a footing. So last week, there was an FAI briefing. And Mark Canham, of course, talked about their pathways plan, and they need government cash for that, talking about 24 academies across 3 different tiers by 2026, and more details to come. And then I suppose the issue is money, how we're going to fund this. That's been the issue for several years now. And Mark Canham said 10 million per annum would be very handy. So that's kind of what we're looking for here. And that's all very well. I guess there was always an understanding they were going to come to the government for money. But 2 weeks before that, the interim CEO, David Carell, at an FAI AGM, was asked about the funding of these academies. And he said, we're going to do it 3 ways. 1, profit from Euro 2028, which we're hosting. 2, and I guess this is kind of taxpayers' money in a sense, or government aid in a sense, help. They want to have a levy on the betting tax. They want a portion of the betting tax. And then 3, the Brexit Adjustment Fund. The point being that when Brexit was coming in, 1.1 billion of EU money was put forward because there was a sense, Brexit is going to change things. It's not good for anyone, really, Brexit. So there's 1.1 billion put up here if your industry is affected by Brexit. And so, an obvious industry which is going to be affected is Irish football. Like our way of producing footballers for the last X number of decades has been hand them over to a UK club and say, please do your best for us. Evan Ferguson being maybe the last pre-Brexit example of that. And so that was fine. David Carell said, well, that'll be one of the avenues, €1 billion from the EU. We'll definitely get, we'll be going for some of that. And so at our briefing just a couple of days ago, Mark Canham said, we are happy to accept. Interesting phrasing. I mean, whether you're happy or not, it doesn't really matter, Mark. I mean,
it wasn't really his mistake, you see. But anyway, this is the thing.
Okay.
Let's get to it.
We are happy to accept. We may have missed an opportunity there as an association on that fund. As in, we missed the deadline to apply.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great, really. I think there's a few aspects to this. I mean, everything revolves around, can we get state funding for this? That there's just no discussion really where it doesn't come into the post-mortem after every international window, or we discuss the general state of the game. You can't get away from it. Yeah. And over the last year, the most important thing that's been happening, I suppose, has been the engagements with government at particular times. And this one just is really more self-inflicted, really bad optics, as opposed to, I think, a massive mistake that's going to cost them money. Okay. Like what happened was that at the as you mentioned, I think they felt the need around the AGM, and this has been a thing at times where I think they've really annoyed government, and it was Pascal Donoghue who almost shot it down, even though they were in with Pascal last month to discuss the academy funding, and I think it was quite a positive meeting where I gather it was widely acknowledged that the money that they're looking for isn't viewed as massively
crazy. Yeah, 10 million doesn't sound undoable.
No, it's not. And when you see what's going on with, you will see the headlines tomorrow and today around what's going to be thrown out. There's an election coming. This is small money. But they really seem to annoy government by trying to tell them where the money should come from. This seems to be, and I don't know, this is obviously, it seems to be on the do's and don'ts of lobbying. Maybe this seems to be, don't tell government, well, do you not realise you have all this money over here? You could get us. And this seems to have sort of wound them up a little bit. Now, it is true that there was a missed opportunity with the Brexit Reserve Fund, the BAR, as has been discussed. And then my understanding is that the FAI were aware of this avenue a couple of years ago and were sort of stodgy about following through on it then. They did sort of miss the boat on it, but in the need to give a presentation at the AGM about their academies, there was a sort of an idea, well, here's one way you could get that money, which Pascal then comes and shoots that down because he's asked about it, and Mark Canham has to come out and say, yeah, that was a mistake. And it creates / cements the image of what's going on. As you say, it's another doozy. It's like same old FAI again.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily so, because I do think they will get some money for this, by the way. I'm not sure in what form, as in not from the BAR, as in for the academies, but where they seem to make the misstep is by trying to sort of tell people where it should come from.
Well, look, they're going to get money from the taxpayer. I mean, whoop-de-doo, congratulations. It's just because it's such a shambles that we're all obliged to give you that money. But this Brexit fund, £1 billion there to do something. They don't apply. They missed the deadline. But then what's more worrying is that their interim CEO 2 weeks ago was talking about this fund.
Yeah.
And Pascal has to, when he's asked about it at a briefing a few days later, has to awkwardly go, oh, the deadline for that is closed. Did the FAI not realise? So 2 weeks ago, the CEO of the FAI did not seem aware that the fund deadline had closed. That's where we are.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to give a different answer to that, but I do feel like there was a sense of we're giving a presentation, we need to put something out there. Now, I will say, for example, raising the betting levy, and it's something I've written a lot about over the last year. I think they've been right to do that.
No, sorry, that's all fine.
But I'm contradicting myself by saying you're telling people where the money should come from. I think that's possibly been wordy to say, well, let's look at the betting levy here.
The betting levy is fine.
But
getting taxpayers' money is fine.
Yeah.
But they've just passed up this huge slush fund of EU money because they didn't apply in time. Missed the deadline.
It would seem to be the case. Now,
and then 2 weeks ago, their CEO didn't know they had missed the deadline.
Yeah. It would seem to be the case.
Well, this is a cheerful start.
Yeah, it is. It really is an uplifting discussion just to get us going.
What's going on?
What is going on? I think you could cut and paste, clip that phrase, what is going on?
What is going on? This is supposed to be the new FAI. What is going on
Yeah.
here?
And I think Mark Canham said in that as well that they'll know by the end of the year where they stand with the academies. That may not necessarily be the case either. Like, it's like putting in a deadline and things again, which hasn't necessarily gone well for Mark over the last year. Setting deadlines, I find, can sometimes talk you into a little bit of difficulty with this stuff. So yeah, it's a constant search for funding, constant search to present the right front, to nail that message. And I just think they sometimes just step on toes when they don't need to. And Pascal was happy enough to
Step back, give them a kick back.
Yeah.
Look, that's fine. They're in a tete-a-tete with government. That's fine. They're stepping on toes. They have to push for the money. They're going to get the betting levy. This is separate. I'm just isolating a case in point. These people are full-time employees in an office every day, sitting around a table much like this saying, how do we make Irish football better? And they missed the deadline to apply for this open goal, no pun intended, slush fund of EU money. And 2 weeks ago, they didn't even realise they'd missed the deadline. Okay.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, you've summarised it well, Joe. I have nothing more to add.
I just wanted to make sure I hadn't misread it last week.
Yeah, and is this the sort of thing that could be held against them as well?
I think it might be.
Yeah, maybe not practically, but how people perceive them. Like you say, they have a knack of annoying people sometimes when they're looking for money. If you're going rattling your bucket next time, it's like, well, how serious are you about actually filling that bucket?
That's a great point. Like, you could imagine in government circles, Pascal going back saying, do you realise the FAI didn't realise that the fund was closed? And then the next question is, do we trust these guys with X number of million over the years to come?
Well, that is the recurring discussion around funding. Like, and again, and it's what would wind me up, because the people who need the funding and, the good of the game, it always seems to be the feeling that the FAI is getting in the way of that. Like, again, it's like the Jonathan Hill stuff last year with the holiday pay and all that stuff. It's like an issue that in the greater scheme of things, it was a serious issue, but in other ways trivial. But it almost helps to like perpetuate the message you can't give money to this, which like potentially kicks another generation further down the road. And here we are. Why haven't we qualified for a tournament in X amount of years? And just this stuff needs to stop, but it doesn't stop. And I think, to be fair, the only thing I will say, I think there was a discussion around should they come out and say they got it wrong, and I guess they did. Maybe that alerted a lot of people to it.
Happy to say it.
Happy to say it. Get out in front of your mistakes at least. Don't need the Oireachtas committee hearing to bring them out to the fore. Just do them yourself.
I've been sitting on that for several days. I actually feel lighter just having said it out loud.
It's good, Joe.
No, over the years, that's not been the Manchester United way. And what's the change? What is going to be the change? And I do think the players, there needs to be a crisis meeting.
For a single player in a match is 5 years. So you had that in your...
No, I knew. Someone told me at half time, but I weren't thinking about that.
Are you thinking about it now? Maybe getting that record of 5 goals?
Hopefully. I don't know.
Salah to try and restore Liverpool's lead here, which he does. Well, after the setback comes the quick recovery from Liverpool, who found a firm foundation for victory again.
Let's talk some Premier League then. So, the weekend that was Manchester City, Newcastle was the lunchtime Saturday game. It was 1-1. Like kind of a chess match quality to it. I know Damien has seen that game, so we'll get his thoughts on it. Arsenal 4, Leicester 2 then. They were 2-0 up. Leicester came back to 2-2. Corner number 17 of the day in the 94th minute got the job done for Arsenal, and they scored another in the 99th minute. So that was ultimately out of jail and happy for Arsenal. Liverpool away to Wolves. That was the Saturday evening game. It was a 2-1 win at Molineux. It was fine. Liverpool generally comfortable. Wolves fans very understanding of their not so easy fixture list at the start of the season. Chelsea was the Cole Palmer show. So good. 4 goals in the space of 20 minutes in the first half. They beat Brighton 4-2. I know Dan watched that game. Aston Villa missed the chance to go joint top with Liverpool. They drew with Ipswich. There are now real worries that Liam Delap is playing too well to declare for Ireland.
I think he's in the England 21. So I think once he's turned 21 at the moment, he can't really declare for Ireland once so
worse has happened.
They're on about changing the rules again to put it a year older. But anyway, yeah, let's. I don't think we should spend too much time thinking about that one at the moment. No.
And then, of course, Old Trafford, scene of the crime. Manchester United 0, Spurs 3. Initial thoughts on what happened at Old Trafford?
I mean, it's just incredible. I know you're going to get into it in more detail, but if you even look at the first 2 goals, I feel like only United would concede these goals. The first goal, United are they're counter-attacking and they concede a counter-attack goal. Like, how does that happen? Like, this Bruno Fernandes plays it long to Garnacho, pops it off to Rashford. United are on the break and suddenly United concede a goal. They concede a counter-attack from a counter-attack. And obviously you could go through, pick who you're most angry at. Look at Rashford, look at the new signing, Ugart. You could look at Dalot just not trying a leg, trying to get back at the back post for Brendan Johnson.
It's funny, the Dalot aspect of it has been largely missed.
Yeah.
But it is worth because the Van de Ven thing is so thrilling.
Yeah.
Well, it was thrilling / watching a schoolboy game where there's a kid there who's way too good.
Yes.
Just stepping forward from the back and strolling past everyone. Like, there was that beautiful quality to that. Or someone turning up in your Astro game and is like, this is ridiculous. What the hell is this person doing here? Like, gliding past everyone.
Yes.
But that just should not happen at any point, but in particular, second minute of a game.
No, it's true. So the Rashford thing was the Rashford thing for sure. And he just, even I was saying earlier in the panel, just from a PR point of view, he just needs to turn and run around and pretend to chase Van de Ven. He doesn't. I actually think De Ligt and Ugart are unaware how fast Van de Ven is. Because as soon as he intercepted the ball, I thought, he did this just a couple of weeks ago. He might do something a bit mad here. And I think there was a slow realisation on Ugarte and De Ligt's part. This guy is the fastest player in the Premier League. So they didn't get across quickly enough. But to your point about Johnson, Dalot was goal side of him, 10 yards goal side of him, and somehow ends up 10 yards behind him. And this is 3 minutes in. And it kind of just continued from there. It was an unbelievable level of dominance, to the point where around the half-hour mark, when Rashford curled a ball into the far post and Garnacho hit the post, with a really good effort, there was actually that nagging sense, Spurs are so on top here and they're only 1-0 up. Could it be one of those days? That was actually the only worry from their point of view. And then it wasn't one of those days. Has Ten Hag entered game over, done here? Is this the slow death over the next couple of weeks? Is this it?
I don't know. Yeah, it does seem to be that way. Like, it's hard to figure out like what stage of the cycle we're at, because I thought he reached that point in April, maybe at a point, had he? You know, like it does feel like. It does feel we're back there now. You're always coming into an international break, 2 toughish games this week. Yes, it's always a good time to make the change. Although, I mean, reading some of the stuff today, and again, Ineos, do they want to do it now? Is Dan Ashworth known as someone who's trigger happy? That's not necessarily his reputation, you know, but surely your patience has to be strained, and that their international breaks can cause you a few issues. All right,
they do, as a playing group, seem to enter this phase of putting in performances where you're just obliged to say, well, the manager's position is untenable, and it felt like one of those afternoons.
Well, what I would say is, I mean, this is obviously the highest level of football. Like, you know, there's no doubt. Like, you could put that Manchester United team out against teams in sort of League One or lower European leagues, and they'd kill them, right? But you generally would watch teams, like I watch a lot of football at lower levels of the game, and you can generally watch a team and you can see, okay, well, this is their plan to press, or this is their shape. And I appreciate things are happening quicker at the highest level of the game. But you'll even see an underdog team go away against a stronger team and have a plan for like a press, or have a plan for a strategy that will get you through. You know, to get done by that type of goal in the second minute of a game just suggests that something is badly wrong. I saw another piece I read today. Someone was even suggesting they were watching the warm-ups before the game. I think it was in the I newspaper, and they were just talking about there's a real difference in intensity between the Spurs work and the Manchester United sort of kickabouts and stuff like that. And I just think it's the manner. It's not just the result. The result is, you can explain away results. It's the manner of it.
Like you mentioned schoolboy stuff there. I mean, like the second goal as well, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but it's just a clearance from Romero. He's chasing in his own corner, hooks it over his shoulder. It bounces in midfield about 10 yards inside the Spurs half. But they're in behind United midfield from a clearance over the shoulder. And like Casemiro's taken out of it, Ugarte and Mount was the midfield at the time. And they're in, it's a header, Martinez is pulled out, and they're away. And this is the structure. That looked to me like, you know, Brennan Johnson he literally jogs into the box with nobody there until he gets into the box to meet him, crosses it in. This is the Kulusevski goal. And that to me was almost like, you know, when you're playing five-a-side and eventually you say, right, well, we just change the teams up here because it's too easy for the other team. Nobody's enjoying this. Let's mix it up a little bit. The intensity had gone completely out of it. This was at 1-0. And like this is Ten Hag's third season as well. I mean, that's the reality of it. He's talking about needing more time. But I mean, you go through, I don't think you're going to see many examples of a coach having such good backing in terms of how much players are now his in the squad. I just went through it. I mean, the top 25 players, 2 of the 3 goalkeepers, 10 Hag signings, 6 of the 10 defenders, 10 Hag signings, 5 of the 6 midfielders and 4 of the 6 forwards. I mean, he has had the chance now and the time to make his print on the club, and this is the team and the squad that he's wanted to assemble, and it just looks to be getting worse.
Before we chat to Damien in just a moment, you were watching The Boy Wonder at Stamford Bridge?
Chelsea, yeah. I mean, it was ludicrously entertaining. Like, I just don't know what to make of Chelsea at all, because they're everything that's wrong with football now. Like, I mean, they are. It's insane. Like we were just chatting before we went on air. Like I stumbled upon this piece from it was a Sky Sports piece on Chelsea. You know, Chelsea have spent 1 million under Todd Bowley. Have they invested wisely? Like
1 billion.
1 billion. Like there's no way you can spend 1 billion on footballers across the year and go, yeah, there's some good value for money in there. Like it's clearly insane what they've done. But even still, like it does have a chance
it's starting
of being
to work.
Successful.
They're in
fourth.
fourth.
I mean, they're all in 17-year contracts or whatever it is. And like, I mean, you know, I think they spent 75 million on agent fees last year. I mean, this is just like football is like you drop down the levels and the amount of money that's been lost, and it's all created by this insanity at the top end of it. And yet, so like it's really bad for you. Yeah, you're just kind of watching the Chelsea game on Saturday. It's like, it's quite fun to watch this. Like, you know, they're quite an exciting team to watch. I mean, you know, they're not defending all that well. Like, they are playing Brighton, who like sold 2 players to them for 125 million combined, you know, and Sanchez was still all over the shop as well in the first half, you know. But Cole Palmer's just, again, he only ended up there because of mad sort of financial balancing of the books, but like he's just, I mean, it could have been. I mean, you know, when people say, "Oh, it could have been." People tend to, it's like a golfer, they give themselves all the putts that they've missed. You know, it could have been 5 under, but genuinely that game could have been any score at half time. But like Palmer scores 4, could have scored 2 more easily by the standards of his finishing. And you look at the Chelsea team, you go through it. I think Cucurella at 26 is the oldest outfield player. You know, so Madueke, Jackson, okay, Sancho's there, who's in and out still. But I don't know. Like you sort of look at going, I feel like I want to watch their games now, even though in many ways they're a club that like represents a lot of what's wrong with the elite end of the game. But, you know, keep tuning in. Cole Palmer will score 30 plus goals this season, and why not?
It is Palmer! Bridge. Sancho. It's Palmer again! Both got 4 now, and it's not even half time.
Well then, these are grim times around Old Trafford. Damien Delaney was watching like everybody else. Hello. Very nice to have you aboard.
Hi, Joe. Very nice to be here. I wish you all the best with your venture. I believe today is your first day, is that correct?
Today is our first day. We appreciate you taking some time off the golf course. Much obliged. Nice to have you on board. Dan McDonnell is here as well.
Hi, Dan.
So,
is this the new dream team, Dan and Joe?
Oh, yeah.
It's a pretty weird dream, anyway. Don't know what kind of dreams you have.
So let's get into it. I mean, this is starting to feel like as bad as it's been under Ten Hag, both because of the performance and because he's 5 transfer windows in, 3 years in, because of Ineos shopping around over the summer and that may be fatally wounding him as well. The nature of just the kind of almost apathy it felt like of the team. On pretty much every level, this is just bad. Yeah. This feels like endgame territory.
Yeah, I agree with that there. I think Ten Hag's job is probably going to be up for vacancy pretty soon. He might cling on a little bit. But on a broader picture, looking at Manchester United, I mean, you're not surprised. Ineos only took over in the summer. And when Ineos took over in the summer, I remember speaking to various people and media and saying that, like, it's going to take them 6, I reckon, transfer windows, which is 3 years. And last week when I saw Omar Barada gave a speech to the people working at Manchester United, and he said that their target is to win the Champions League by 2020, or win the Premier League, by 2028. I think that ties in, because Manchester United are in an awful predicament, and we will come to Ten Hag, in that they're lumped with a load of players that they can't get rid of. And whatever about signing players, they're limited financially in terms of wages because of financial fair play. It has to be hurting them, because they have a number of players, a lot of players on extortionate amount of money. Players that are never getting that money elsewhere, and that's why they can't move them on. I know that Ineos, with the team they've assembled behind the scenes, the middle management, that was such a huge problem for them previously. They are aware of those issues. The problem is they can't get those players out. There's about 6, 7 or 8 players there that are never getting paid the same amount of money. Their transfer fee that Manchester United paid is probably 25%, if not a third of what Manchester United paid. So they're lumbered with these players and they can't get rid of them. And for the change to happen, you need to move on, I would say, 5 or 6 players. The likes of Harry Maguire, Marcus Rashford, I would say Luke Shaw, Casemiro. There's a big long list of players there of people that should not be at that football club. And that's how you enact change. You can do as much change around the periphery, but until you change the playing squad, and Ineos have only had 1 transfer window. And I think that their priority now is moving players out. In fact, I would be 100% certain that is their priority at the moment, is changing the culture. The only way you change the culture is change players. And there's too many players there that are not up to the standard for Manchester United.
To what extent then might that save or excuse Ten Hag?
I don't think it does, to be honest with you, because I've always said to you in the chats we've had before, Joe, that a manager's number one job is to get the most out of what he has. I feel sorry for him, because it can't be a happy environment going into Manchester United. It's not over the last, even previous managers. The stories are obviously coming out that it's not a good environment. It's not an environment that's conducive to winning football. You've a lot of players there that shouldn't be there. A lot of players on inflated money, and a lot of players at the tail end of their career. And if you were to pick an example, any example of, say, someone like Harry Maguire, Casemiro, any of these guys, they're all out of the team. They're going to be going in every day, and as much as they're good professionals, as much as they try hard and they try to be good leaders, it's going to be fairly flat. All changing rooms from successful teams are buoyant places where people are bounding in every day, and even the players that aren't involved, they're training really well because there's a good spirit there. Manchester United just feels like it lacks that. There doesn't seem to be any bounce about it. You need to get people in with a point to prove. People are on that upward trajectory of their career. And unfortunately, Manchester United people, too many people that are on the other side of it, or just aren't good enough. And when you get a collection of that becomes your culture, and that looks like the culture at Manchester United now.
So the broader point is all important, that you've said at the Ineos situation and just how long this is going to take to unravel. Yeah. The specifics of the performance yesterday, as a former professional, you're watching fellow Premier League players going about their business. What jumped out to you about Manchester United yesterday?
The same things that have always jumped out. They have no legs in their team. They can't run. They sign players who either can't run or won't run. And it doesn't matter which it is, ultimately, because the end result is the same. You have a team that doesn't run, and they can't. I mean, you look at the goal, the Van de Ven situation, Bruno Fernandes is doing his best to run back, can't get anywhere near him. Ugarte, now he's a signing from Ineos, and I've been really surprised at him, at his lack of mobility from what I've seen in him. He doesn't look like he can cover the ground. And when Mickey van de Ven, you can blame De Ligt, you can blame Dalot, you can blame Mazraoui, all the people you want for that. But as a defensive midfield player, as soon as Mickey van de Ven picks the ball up, it's his job to slide across down the line of where Mickey van de Ven is going, to fill the lane. Normally we call it a passing lane, but he's running with the ball. He needs to fill that lane. And then worst case scenario, the ball gets flicked out wide to Tottenham's wide player, and Mazraoui readjusts, but he doesn't see it. And it's too late. When he does see it, he can't get there. You watch him trying to move the 10 yards. Mickey van de Ven is gone. And unfortunately for De Ligt, he's just caught. He's a sitting duck, really, because he's in a standing position and Van de Ven is in full flow. So it's difficult for him. But how, initially when Rashford I wouldn't blame Rashford too much because he's going the wrong way, and short of like clipping Van de Ven's heels, will he pick up a yellow card? I don't think he should do that because he's still got 70 yards to go to the goal, so he's quite okay to let him go. But Bruno moves across the pitch, cannot get anywhere near him, and Ugarte just doesn't see it. And that's the worrying thing. And when he does see it, he can't get there. Yeah. He's too late. And obviously Dalot then just gives up the ghost. Another player, talk about players who can't run and won't run. There's one that won't run. Yeah. Like how a fullback can just let him go regardless of the situation is staggering. And the fact that he put his hand in the air as soon as the goal went in, as in like, oh yeah, 100%, that's me, sorry lads. So there's your can't run, won't run.
I was wondering with Ugarte if there was any aspect whereby, being unfamiliar with the league, he may not just have realised that Mickey van de Ven is not your usual centre half. He may have thought it, but so in general play, was that kind of a moment that he had against Van de Ven? Was that in keeping with how he played generally? Like, what were your first impressions if you took that moment off? If you stood away from that moment for a moment?
Yeah, I still watch him, and he doesn't see it quickly enough. Okay. Now granted, I take a point that he's new to the league, but he's going to have to learn very fast. And maybe in France, the play is a little bit slower, it's a bit more methodical, centre backs like Mickey van de Ven aren't everywhere when they step in and they sprint like that. But I mean, the natural instincts, that's not something you think about. That's an instinct of as soon as Van de Ven breaks with that ball, he must think, I've got to get down the line of this quickly, and you bust a gut to get down the line of it. And two things happen. Either he flicks it wide to the wide player or he flicks it back inside. Man United are playing with two number 6s, so he flicks it inside Van de Ven. Kobe Mainoo should be there, and that's part of being a team, but he has to stop that run. He can't let him. And he looked shocked and I think he knew as well. He was like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. But I don't think he moves well. I don't think he's the elite, athlete that Manchester United are looking at. Now, it's okay not being an athlete, but your reading of the game has to be incredible. Like, you know what I mean? You have to sense those situations and slide across. He doesn't look like he is either, just based on that situation of what I've seen in him. Now, I don't want to castigate him because it's very early in his career. I mean, he's only just signed for the club. But I mean, if you had a book on how to play number 6, I mean, that's in the intro. Like, that's the first thing, and he missed it. So that would be concerning.
I don't know to what extent, say, take that moment, is Ten Hag entitled to say as manager, oh, come on, like that, just sort that out yourselves. That's not up to me. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Just in general play, like it's hard not to be influenced by the commentary when you're watching a game. So, for instance, Gary Neville, routinely is saying, I can't even work out what the trigger for the press is with this bunch. Like, it's just all ad hoc. There's no plan.
Yeah.
It's just, was that jumping out to you? Because that feels massively on Ten Hag.
Yeah, and I just think that goes back to the point of view of you've players who don't run or can't run. And if you're trying to put together a coherent press, you need like the liveliest bunch of players. Like, you remember Liverpool in their prime, the energy, the drive, the hunger that they played with. You know, even this year covering the Champions League, teams like Red Bull Salzburg, you know, when under Pep Linders, like you look at them in the games that we've covered, like it's incredible, the athleticism of these players, 21, 22 years of age, and they're okay to make a mistake, but it's a positive mistake. So they'll overpress and they'll get played round, but they bust a gut to get back in. But Manchester United, I reckon if you're doing a session on a Thursday morning and you're asking Marcus Rashford to press, or you're asking Garnacho to press, or if you're asking Bruno to press, like it's kind of like, yeah, I'll do it, but it's half a yard short at best, or they don't even do it. It's not coherent. It's very hard for a coach if you've got players that don't want to do it. It's like race horses. You know, they're bred for a certain distance. They're bred for a certain purpose. And some players, that's why when Liverpool and all these teams, they won't sign players like Garnacho, no matter how good they are, because they don't fit into what they're trying to do in terms of press. Now, I know that's a strange example, but like you sign players that fit your ethos. It's like the Ralph Rangnick open heart surgery comment. The first thing you have to do is figure out, how do we want to play? The owners have to sit down. What do we want to be known for? What are our values that we're putting on show every day? And then we go and we sign players that will give us exactly what we want. And that's what he was talking about when he made that speech or that press conference. But unfortunately, Manchester United, they've got some decent players, yeah. But like, I mean, they're just all individuals. Starting with Bruno. I mean, I couldn't play with him. I mean, he is just as off the cuff as off. I mean, you've no idea what the man is going to do. I don't think he does. And that's why I think he thrived under Solskjaer. Because under Solskjaer was a very liberal manager. Just go and enjoy yourselves and, you know, just feel it, you know, and if you feel like you want to do it, you go and do it. And that's why Bruno thrived. You try and put someone like Bruno in a system, and I think he struggles massively, you know. He presses when he feels like it, not when the team is ready, not when he senses, like the team has to sense that the opposition are under a little bit of pressure. So we're going to go, one goes off, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players go in, and the press is effective. He just runs off of himself. Other players are running back to their position. And the same thing in possession as well. He's got no discipline in possession. It's like a 12-year-old in the playground who's the best player. Just runs round and just give me the ball. I'll make it happen. And he just disrupts the cohesion, the flow of the team. Like, let's say the right back has the ball. He runs over to get the ball off the right back. When it's not his job, it might be Ugarte's job to get it there. Like, sometimes as a player, you have to hold your position because you'll occupy a member of the opposition. Someone has to mark you. And if you hold your position, the number 6 might have to stay with you, which means you're going to create a bit of space for Ugarte. But he just runs into positions, comes back, decides to get it off the back four when he feels like it. I mean, that's not how football is played, not at the professional level anymore, unless you're playing in a team that plays like that. But at the top level, elite football, it's all about systems now and having a job. And for me, Bruno is the worst one of the lot. He's a brilliant player, but like, my God, would he be a nightmare to play with?
Yeah, and then it's so glaring when you're playing against a team like Spurs, where Postecoglou from minute one has just stamped his authority all over the team. And it's kind of wizardry, the way they're moving the ball next to the way Manchester United are trying to. And, you know, case in point would be a doggy. I mean, there's times where you look at him and you're like, God, this guy's so good, you know? He's popping up and he's so dangerous. And then he goes off injured, and Jed Spence just slots into exactly the same role. No problem, drilled to the same degree. And that's maybe what's most damning for anyone who's defending Ten Hag is Postecoglou in far less time has got this team working in a certain way. Yeah. And what I'd be like, I'm just fascinated to know with Ten Hag, when United are trying to pass the ball out from the back, trying to build play or patterns, you know, point about Bruno very much taken. But I mean, are they like ignoring Ten Hag? Is he unable to tell them what to do in a way that they're buying. Like, just nothing about what they're doing with the ball screams of a team who are coached either. Like, that's the other, like, whatever about being Mr. Motivator, which he's not, he sort of did arrive as, well, this is cutting edge tactician. He'll get them playing in patterns, which had been the big criticism of the previous managers. And then you see yesterday.
Yeah, I agree, you know, and you said about Udogie, I mean, Brighton are the ultimate of this, you know. I mean, Lewis Dunk playing for Brighton at the moment, I watch him play football and I played against him all the way up, and, you know, remember his partnership under Chris Hughton with Shane Duffy? They were a kind of head it and clear it guy. Now I watch Lewis Dunk play football and I think, oh my goodness, that guy has improved so much, but he's bought into the system. And I guarantee if you asked all those Brighton players, wherever the ball is on the pitch, every other player has to be in a certain position. And I mean within 2 square yards. So Lewis Dunk can play an awful lot of his passes blind into a certain area because he knows there'll be a Brighton player in that certain position, in that certain zone, right? And obviously he doesn't play it blind, but, you know, if you asked him to, he would tell you. Yeah. As soon as the ball comes to him, he will say, I can tell you where all other 10 players in the pitch are going to be. So that if I do get under pressure, my head gets down, I know there's going to be somebody in these zones. That's an organised team. I think Ten Hag, having worked with Pep Guardiola, because that's Pep Guardiola's positional type game, I think Ten Hag would like to do that. I think this Man United team are just so off the cuff. I mean, I don't think the players want to do it. There's a lethargy about them. I don't think a lot of them are good enough to do it. You know, I don't think any of them want to buy into it. Even playing out from the back, the fullbacks go so high and wide. The wide players stay wide, which I've never understood with Manchester United. I mean, I know Manchester United have this tradition of, you know, our wingers, you know, they stay wide. But it creates a huge problem for the fullback then. Like, where does the fullback go? Like, Pep Guardiola plays with wide players now on the touchline, but the fullbacks kind of come into midfield, or they come into in central areas. If you look at Manchester United, anytime the ball goes to the wide player, you can see the fullback, they don't even know where to go. So I can overlap because they stood in the touchline. I kind of underlap, and I'm making it worse because Bruno's after coming over and filling a hole because he wants to get on the ball. So do I just become a sitting sore fullback? You know, I watch it. It's one thing that fascinates me with him. That's what I'm talking about, that organisation. Like, when the ball goes to the wide player, Bruno, stay away. It's none of your business. Leave him 1v1. Fullback, I want you to underlap. You know, or stay, just some sort of, these are the patterns that you're talking about. But Bruno just comes over and he brings a number 6 with him. All of a sudden it gets all clogged up down that area. Ball comes back and they try and go down the other side. Manchester United are very, very easy to play against. To answer your question, I don't know whether Ten Hag is trying to do this or whether he's basically just thrown the towel in and was like, somebody just please hurry up and sack me because I cannot get this team to play the way I want to play. Like, you look at what he's been used to in 20. All Dutch players who are used to a certain system, who have that same positional style. I think in Man United, there's no style, and that comes from the last 4 or 5 years of transfers. Is that Ten Hag's fault? I don't know. I mean, you know, I know the likes of Anthony are his signings, and, you know, he keeps signing players that he's worked with, but I think his time is probably up, to be honest with you, Ten Hag. But the problem Manchester United have now is, who do you get? Who wants that job? I don't think you're going to get anyone of note to take that job. I saw something the other day where people were talking about maybe Solskjaer coming back, because I think Man United have looked around for managers, but you're not going to get anyone of note. You're not going to get anyone that's going to grab the fans' attention. So when you see things online like, oh, we should go and get Zidane wouldn't touch that team. I think there'll be a lot of players, a lot of managers want that job in 3 years' time, once all the issues that I'm talking about have been sorted out, once they've gotten all the dead wood out of that football club. And once the dead wood is gone, and there's a clean slate, and they've slowly built up to the ideas of what Manchester United want to be. So I'm not surprised. I don't think that anything was going to change with Ineos taking over immediately. It's going to take, I would say, at least 6 transfer windows, which is 3 years, for them to clear out what they want to clear out and get in what they want to get in.
Because surely, Damo, like, the players must sniff this as well too. Like, I think we spoke about it earlier before you come on, and it's interesting you mentioned like Red Bull Salzburg, or like, we'll watch teams in Europe this week who are nowhere near as good, but they'll have an identity. You know, you understand what this team is, and it just strikes me like, for a team to start a game that badly, and I know we can talk about the bad press and so on, but there has to be an element of, has everyone just chucked it? And I don't know if you remember the chance was it the Madison 1-2 at the edge of the box in the first 10-15 minutes, and like, that is just as basic as can be. And you're thinking, I mean, surely you've been in dressing rooms where things aren't going well, but the cracks might appear later in a game when you're put under it. When you start that badly, that looks pretty terminal.
But I think the standards in Manchester United are just, they don't have any anymore, because you've got a changing room full of people who are trying to get out and they're looking for pay-ups. And I suppose, like, I'll diverge out on another point that I thought of, like, let's take, for instance, say Harry Maguire, who's on X amount of money a week, has got 2 years left in his contract. How it works as a professional footballer, now you might know this, it's like, so he's owed 10 million quid over the next 2 years, for example. I know these figures aren't specific. And Man United are trying to get him out. And they've probably said to his agent, look, we're looking for Harry to go. And the agent will say, well, give us 10 million quid and we'll leave. Obviously, Manchester United haven't got 10 million pounds to start paying players off. So they need to wait for these players' contracts to run down. Like, football players' contracts are airtight, watertight. Like, as soon as you sign it, as long as you show up, you get paid. There's no standard of, like, whether you're trying or not. As long as you show up at a specified time every morning, you get paid every cent of your contract, not including bonuses for appearances and winning things, but in terms of your basic wage. So players are now earning money. Imagine they can't offload them. So what will happen is, let's say, for instance, West Ham came in for Harry Maguire. Now, this is just an example, but this will be right across the board of these players at Manchester United. And West Ham will offer, say, £15 million for Harry Maguire. And then Harry Maguire will say, that's fine. Can I have 10 of that, please, to pay up my contract? And the club will go, well, no, because we're only getting 5 million for you then. And West Ham wouldn't be able to pay Harry Maguire's contract. So West Ham would say, well, we can only afford to give you 4 million over the next 2 years. So Harry Maguire says, well, I'm short 6 million quid, so I need 6 million. So Manchester United go, well, we can't just cut you a cheque. So that's why they're caught in this predicament. At the same point, I mean, what happens in a lot of football clubs is players like that will get banished to the reserves or the youth team, or they'll create a separate environment to get these players out. But Manchester United can't do that, because then their actual value just plummets, because now you've got a player on X amount of money a week sitting in the reserves. So the problem is they've stuck with, I would say, at least 8 or 9 players that are in this situation, and the atmosphere going in every morning must be awful. And I mean truly awful, like genuinely. I mean, one solution, and this will be drastic, because you're talking about why players aren't running around, because players go in every day, and half the players know they're not wanted, they're not going to play. Most of the players are saying, well, I'm getting paid X amount of money, I have 2 years left, and they fall out with the club because they want to leave and the club won't pay them up. So, I mean, what they could do, Manchester United, and this would be extreme, like as extreme as you could be, is just take those 8, 9 players and just remove them. Now, you might have about £2 million a week going out the door on those players, and just get U-team players in and just clear the decks that way and just write off that money. Now, that is like probably would never happen because it's so difficult. But I guarantee you, over the last transfer window, Manchester United have been actively trying to move all these players. The Christian Eriksen's, I mean, he can't play for Manchester. He's a wonderful player. He was a wonderful player back in the day, but he can't play as a number 6 of Manchester United's team. He can't run anymore. Yes, he's technically excellent, but he's nowhere near it. You look at the goal that Twente scored. It was almost a carbon copy of what Van de Ven did. They just ran right through the middle of them. That's just a team that is just disorganised, disinterested. Very hard for a manager to get that back. So to answer your question with terms of identity, I would just say it's an awful environment. I can spot it a mile away because I've been involved in environments like that, going in every day, looking at players, and like there's just no motivation. They're just coming in, doing the bare minimum, and they're just waiting to find out, can I get out next January? Can I get out in 2 years' time? But they're still getting paid X amount of money a week.
Before you go, they play Porto away, by the way, on Thursday, and then they have Aston Villa away on Sunday. I somehow think we may be talking about them next Monday. So we don't have to get everything in. Arsenal had a strange afternoon against Leicester in that they were utterly dominant and were ahead, and then it was level, and then with their 17th corner in at a time, they got what must just feel like a really big goal, and then a bonus one to make it 4-2. And Manchester City, meanwhile, drew away at Newcastle 1-1. What was kind of interesting, I suppose, was the week that was in terms of the nature of the rivalry between the two. It's definitely now been properly born. Like, there's no more we're best friends, I'm going to sell you Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko. That day has thankfully passed. So I'm curious, in terms of how Arteta played this, it was put to him on the Tuesday that quite a few of the City players had talked about Arsenal's dirty tactics, time wasting, cynicism, etc. And Arteta, I think, still in a fit of pique, said, no comment, but I've been there before. I was there for 4 years. As if, to imply, I know about all their tricks. And then this was put to Guardiola, and he was genuinely angry in the press conference and started talking about Arteta needs to be very clear. What does he mean? I have a good relationship with him, but hopefully this question will be asked. And then he can tell us what he means instead of leaving it up in the clouds. And said, does he mean the charges? Is that what he's talking about? What's he talking about? And Arteta made the decision on Friday to come out and just genuflect before Pep. He said, I love Pep. I admire him. I admire him since I was 10 years of age. I respect him profoundly. I'm so grateful for what he did to me. When I say stuff about them, I meant I know how hard they work. That's what I was talking about. I know how hard they work. Do you think Arteta has done the right thing here in just backing right down? Let's not make Pep Guardiola any more angry or motivated than he already is. If you're a player, would you be happy enough that Arteta took that one and said, you know what, let's just back right down, put some coolant on this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was for a second there, for the last 4 years, we've had this Pep Klopp love-in where it was all, and I thought all of a sudden we're going to get a Wenger-Ferguson type rivalry. But I think Arteta, having watched him and seen the documentaries and stuff, the type of manager that he is, he just focuses everything on them. And he doesn't want external noises. He doesn't want anything outside to break his players' concentration. And he would much rather his players be concentrated than trying to rattle Pep or trying to get like Ferguson used to do with other managers and stuff like that. So I think he just made sure that he focuses on them and he wants to beat them fair and square and doesn't want to get involved in any of this stuff. But I still feel that it's simmering and it's probably one comment away or one. If they get drawn against each other in a cup game or they meet each other at some point up the road, that it's just one comment on the sideline away from exploding, which is good because you have that rivalry. They are the two teams now. They're vying for this Premier League, and Arsenal are as close to it as they've been. I really believe that. I think the Rodri injury has really catapulted Arsenal alongside, if not past, Man City. There's only been 2-3 points between them every season or in the last couple of years. I think that Rodri injury means Man City are going to drop the necessary required points. And I think Arteta knows that as well. And if he can keep his team focused and keep them to the levels that they've been at, I think they could have won the Premier League this year. I genuinely think the Rodri injury is that significant. I think that Pep could accommodate pretty much any other player missing from that Man City team. He would find a way. He would find a formation. He would find a style. If they lost Haaland or if they lost Diaz or they lost Akanji, he would find a way. But I think I'm not sure he's got that to replace what Rodri gives them until they get to January, and they might be able to get somebody in. But at the moment, I think Man City, and I thought I saw it against Newcastle, I think the team would probably be affected as well. The all-round team not having Rodri, as you're sitting in a tunnel before a game and you have a little look round and Rodri's standing in your line, you're going to feel a little bit better about yourself because that's the guy that's going to get you over the line when you need to be or when the going gets tough. So I think the Rodri-shaped hole has put Arsenal, I think, now in the driver's seat. That if they don't win it this year, it'll be thoroughly disappointed for them.
So good to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Damien Delaney.
There we go. Mikel Arteta. I was actually thinking there about Arteta.
I think he did the right thing as well, by the way.
You think, yeah?
Absolutely. Manchester City are more than rattled by this situation. Arsenal are in their thoughts. I don't think turning this into a complete war at this stage of the season is good for Arsenal. They have plenty of motivation. They'll have plenty of adrenaline. This is new, uncharted territory for them. The last thing you want is City with their backup, I would think. So I suspect when he did it initially, it was just anger, like frustration. He was still caught up in it even by Tuesday. But I think somewhere between Tuesday, seeing Pep's reaction, and Friday, he realised there's no winning that fight. Let's not make that a fight.
Yeah, no, he seems to be sort of getting a lot of people's back up about Arteta as well too. I always remember because when they played Dundalk in the Europa League group stages 4 years ago, remember I asked him, I did an Arteta press conference from my living room because this was all lockdown sort of closed doors days, asking Arteta some question about the Dundalk manager at the time. It was that Italian Filippo.
Has Mick Ellertat seen your living room? Were you visible?
I was, yeah. Pretty much.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
Very obliging. So
Yeah, good.
obviously on the basis of that interaction, I'm going to refer to him as my pal.
Yeah.
He's a great bloke, But it was more, I actually think back to that time now more, he was meant to be done around that time.
Yes, yeah.
That was the whole, here he is in the Europa League, and actually weirdly, these are all big games for him because he's sort of one more embarrassment here away from potentially being gone, which is because I think that would have been just the winter after they'd won that cup final, the with the sort of refix season and so on. So you kind of remember how undermined he was by everything, and it's actually a great triumph that he's got round to where he is now. That we're talking about getting under the skin of Pep and Haaland reacting to him, and it's like he's relevant, even if some people don't like him. Even if you see Roy Keane and people are sort of wound up in some ways by him, that's almost a victory in itself that he's in that upper elite bracket now.
It's a remarkable turnaround. This next part will date, so we won't labour the point. A few things going on here at home this week. Rovers in Europe will come to later in the week. But on Friday, you're reading what's going on here. Shelbourne are action again this evening against Pats. So things will change dramatically over the next 24 hours. But Shelbourne are on 54 points, Derry on 50, and then Rovers game extra played 5 points off. So it's 4 points between Shelbourne and Derry. And so on Friday, on the face of it, if you had said in the morning to Shelbourne, you're going to drop 2 points against Sligo, they would have seen it as dropping 2 points against Sligo in the context of league title race. But then Derry, away from home, lose to Drogheda, and then Shamrock Rovers against Pats, the two in-form sides in the league. But there's a kind of sense Rovers starting to really get a sniff of maybe a late surge here and it's showtime and let's go. And suddenly it's Stephen Kenny in a post-match interview beaming at a 3-0 win against Rovers. So that's Rovers gone, you would think, realistically.
No, I don't think so. Of course you can't. This is the best, worst title race ever.
Is this a vintage title race, or
it's vintage because it's not boring. But
Okay.
there's a massive thing around it. It's like, is this good? I'm not sure. Is this a good thing? Galway, by the way, Galway United are only 5 points off the pace as well,
Okay.
and they're newly promoted. So literally every team. I know I mentioned this earlier. This analogy about the golfer will always tell you they should have got the putts or whatever. Every team, I think probably 6 teams are going to at the end of the season go. Sit back at the end of the year and go, do you know, if things have been different, we could have won that league. Let's spend more next year and maybe we will. And this will have a disastrous offshoot. But I appreciate a lot of people may listen to this after the Shells Pats game potentially. But going into that, Shells are top and have won 1-8 in the league, and Derry are second and have won 1-7.
Yes.
And this explains where you are. Like Derry, I was in the game in Drogheda, really poor. Drogheda doing very well, second from bottom, but still. Derry this season have taken 19 points from 16 away games, and they could still win it. So it makes no sense. Everyone is limping, and I think Rovers, I know what you say about that defeat, but I'm sure if you said to Stephen Bradley on Friday, you're going to lose today, but you're only going to lose a point on the two teams ahead of you because Derry haven't moved away from them at all. I think you'd probably take it.
Okay.
They'll all think if we can just win our last 4 games here or whatever, however many games you have left.
Yeah.
But generally it could be mid-70 points to win the league, and at times there'll be massive gaps. Some years there's been a 20 plus gap between first and fourth. Say you go back to 2016, it'd be something like that. Now you have 12 points between first and seventh, I think. And if you think going into the game tonight, and I appreciate I'm doing that, if this had happened and that had happened, but Shells are on 54 and Pats, there was a game earlier in the season where Pats, Stephen Kenny's first game against Damien Duff, which was a great event, Shells got a 95th minute winner in a game that Pats could have won. If that game had flipped in the other direction, you'd have 7 points between 6 teams now. It's extraordinary. But it's been great from the point of view of so people are really into it, that the Friday night I was in Drogheda, but the updates, there's 4 games and you're like, what's happening here? Or there's 1 game on the screen and you're trying to watch LOI TV and see what's going on. And so you're going to have these great Friday nights coming in the running, which is going to be great. But obviously you step back from it and go, let's go full circle to the start of the show and the FBI, and it's like, what's the level of what we're watching here? Shouldn't this be better? But it's also great drama and theatre. even if it's sort of a slow bicycle race as opposed to like a sprint to the finish.
I was going to say a bad egg and spoon race, but I mean, all
we can
analogies
take
work.
whatever we want,
Yes.
you know. And I appreciate one big win for, you know, a team at the top can change it, but look, people have complained that it's been like Rovers have won a couple of years in a row and there's been no intrigue at all. At least you're going to get a run in this year, and people can hopefully engage with that.
Let's talk about it more later this week. Rovers in action on Thursday in Europe as well.
Apoel Nicosia, yeah. I will say about that game, it's one of those things that Damo was on about player contracts and how it works. I think, you know, Jack Byrne in that game, I think he's been making the quip. It might be the first game in history where someone's still being paid by the other club they're playing against in Europe. I mean, he had a what Damo said there completely resonates. I'm not 100% sure if Jack is still, but he certainly was being paid by Apoel Nicosia for a good time after that. That's well known. That's not breaching something. That's how it works. I was thinking of Leeds United back in the day where they had all their players. So I think the joke has been made, you know, it's the first game where someone's been paid by both sides, you know.
Are Leeds still playing?
I'm sure someone's still on the books there, yeah.
We got to go. Thank you so much for coming in today.